people often talk about the small stuff people do every day as if it's not enough, as if it's not making a difference in the world. But it's the accumulation of all of that small stuff that gave me the mechanisms I needed to deal with diabetes, my stroke, losing my first wife, and just getting through.
Today's guest is Barnaby Howarth. Used to work with him back in the Fox Sports days. Really good fella. It's so good to reconnect with him and hear his story. He's been through quite a journey. As he says in his bio, he sees himself as an average bloke, but his story is anything but average. Received a diagnosis of diabetes as a young fella. Had a really bad head knock out one night that resulted in him having a stroke and losing function of down the left side of his body, which he has not made a full recovery from. Losing his first wife to cancer. So some really challenging things that you think if you look at it from a personal perspective, that would break a lesser person. But like he said, when you're amongst these moments, you just have to do your best to get through them. And that's exactly what he's done. He's seen the good in these situations. He's learned to be positive through all these situations. And I love in this chat how he passes on so many of those messages, how you can apply them to your life. And one of my favorite parts of the chat was hearing about the huge positive impact that his sporting community, his football community was in not just getting him through those times, but then helping him out the other side to some pretty special moments, which you'll definitely enjoy listening to. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Hey Barnaby, how are you, mate?
I'm fantastic. And yourself?
Going well, thanks. We're just reminiscing about Fox Sports days all those years ago. How long has it been since you worked there?
About 1,000 years. No, when I left, it was still, still analog videotapes. Yeah. With half the building was a bloody library full of videotapes. Yes. But now it's just little digital booths.
Yeah.
So absolutely. It's been a long time since I was there.
Yeah, and that was my first gig, was in the tape library, dealing with all of the different people like yourself coming in, trying to access all the different footage. Oh man, lifetime ago. Good times though, right?
Big time.
Okay, so you've lived a lifetime of a story since then, and I kind of was familiar with some of that because I was still working with your brother at that point. But I was detached from a fair bit of what went on. I know, like if we look at your sporting journey, you were excelling at Pennant Hills, and then you were in the Swan system. How far along were you? Did you get as far as reserve grade at the Swans?
So when I played in 1998, there was a thing called the supplementary list, which was literally the very bottom rung of the ladder. There was the main list where they picked the first grade squad from, a rookie list, which were kids they were giving a chance to, and the supplementary list was below the rookie list. Just a bloke that scraped in at the last second. They thought, we've no idea what's going to happen here, but we'll give him a chance. Yeah. So I was the only player on that list. So I played. It was back in the days where there was a reserve grade competition.
Yeah.
So I trained full time with them. Got all the uniforms and went to all the functions, and I was part of the team.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get picked for first grade.
You're right.
So it was pretty incredible, and it was in hindsight, it was an incredible time to be there. So a lot of my teammates in reserves at the time were Neville nobodies at the time, but went on to become some of the greatest AFL players of all time. It was Adam Goode's first year in the AFL.
Yeah.
Leo Barry, who took the best mark in AFL history in 2005.
Yeah, nice.
Ben Matthews, Jared Crouch, a lot of guys who went on to become superstars were just kids cutting their teeth. So it was a really, really cool time to be there.
Fantastic. And do you have fond memories of not just the football side of that, but what you learn about yourself as a person being immersed in that sort of environment?
I actually, I didn't realize it at the time, but the lessons I was learning there, just about camaraderie and mateship and sacrifice and, helping your mates whenever they need it, regardless of how close you were. Those lessons have helped me through my struggles later in life. The thing called the Bloods culture, the Sydney Swans, started in 2003. So I missed the actual official launch of it, but it was there. The seeds of it were there in '98, and I experienced that after my incidents. But I had in '98. I just thought, yeah, this is cool. Got the shirt, got the hat, got the boots.
Yeah.
But I didn't think much more about it than that. But with the advantage of hindsight, that 1 year at the Swans has been one of the most valuable experiences I've had in terms of getting through challenges.
Yeah, and so let's get to the challenges. So you said that you're 100% cool chatting about this, but you were out with the boys. I guess that was just mates, or was that the Penno boys after a game?
We had a night off training because it was the representative weekend.
Yep.
So I went for a run with two good mates of mine and one of the mates' friends. We got caught up in looked like a pretty small little scuffle outside of a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
There's about 5 blokes, and we got into a bit of a fisticuff. Well, sorry, my mate started the fisticuff and carried on a bit. So I ran and grabbed him and said, "No, you're being a toolbox. Let's go."
Yeah.
So we started walking away, and those 5 blokes he was fighting with must have got on their phones and rung their mates. We ended up getting chased down by a group of 20 blokes. Some had their shirts off, some were yelling abuse. They all just came out of pubs in North Sydney and just wanted to punch somebody. Huh. So I was out with 3 other blokes. 2 guys ran. Myself and one other guy stayed behind and tried to talk the mob down, which didn't work too well. My mate was king hit from behind. And then while he was lying on the ground unconscious, some guys stood around him and kicked him in the head. What? So I ran over and shoved those kickers off. Yeah. That's the last thing I remember about the fight. Apparently I was king hit from behind and then kicked in the head a few times while I was out. I woke up a couple of minutes later, though. My life carried on literally 100% normally. I played that representative game of footy on the weekend. I actually captained the Sydney team to a 60-point win over the Riverina.
Wow.
And went back to work on the Monday. But turns out I'd torn my basilar artery, which is an artery in your brainstem that's pretty much the most important artery in the human body. Carries all the blood from the body to the brain. So I'd torn that, but I had no idea, and I just walked around as if there was nothing wrong. Went back to training at Pennant Hills on Tuesday and Thursday. But after training on Thursday, my vision was getting a bit blurry, and I'm diabetic, so I thought it was a low sugar thing. Yeah. But had some Coke and some food, and it didn't improve. So I told my mate to bring my dad to come pick me up because I couldn't drive in the state I was in. So Dad came and picked me up, and by the time I got home, I was a mess. I was just veering all over the place, couldn't walk properly, passed out at the front door. Mum and Dad rushed me up to the hospital, and they were told that I'd had a stroke. Well, actually, initially they thought, because I'd come from the pub after team selections for Penno, they thought I was a drug addict. And Mum and Dad said no, he didn't touch drugs, and they gave him the yeah, sure, look of doubt. Yeah. So that after they determined I had a stroke, I was put on life support for 4 days. Family and friends told to come and say goodbye.
What?
My little brother flew back from Scotland. Family came from interstate. So when I opened my eyes after 4 days, I didn't realise anything had happened. And someone explained to me I had a stroke. I've been unconscious for 4 days, and it was now Monday. So my first question when I opened my eyes, my first thing on my mind,
did we win?
Looked around at everybody who were crying, and oh my God, he's speaking. I said, did we beat North Shore? Because we lost, I was spewing. We've been undefeated halfway through the year.
Oh no! And you're at that point, are you still thinking I should have been there or something like that?
No, well, actually, yes, because I literally just opened my eyes. I had no idea how bad things were.
You're right.
But I tried getting out of bed not long after, and my legs just didn't. The coordination, basically, when you have a stroke, when I had my stroke, all the signals I built up from my brain to the left side of my body had been wiped clean.
What?
So I didn't know that. So your brain just thinks you can do these things.
Yeah.
Swung my legs around to get out of bed, went to stand up, and when the weight of my body went into my legs couldn't manage it. So I just crashed on the floor. It's pretty scary.
I bet. Do you remember the moments before, like going to hospital? Do you remember those sort of moments, or are you recalling those from people telling you what happened?
Yeah, so what I've recalled, I remember clear as day. So
was that scary in that moment when you were stumbling or you still thought it was just diabetes at that point?
Oh no, yeah, that was a bit there. That's a bit blurry with the memory, but
yeah.
Look, you don't realise how bad things were. You're just dealing with the here and now.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this kind of sucks. I can't walk properly, but
Yeah.
you just get through it as best you can. Dad was carrying me down the path, so you just make do with what you got. It's more the hindsight when you realise your legs don't work and you can't hold a pen in your left hand. That's when it starts getting scary.
Yeah, right. And what was the diagnosis at that point? Were they telling you this will be what you're looking at in the future, or was it a bit unknown?
Well, initially you don't learn everything straight up because it's really intimidating. So the first thing I learned that would have scared the crap out of me had I known at the time was that most people that have a torn basilar artery don't survive.
Right.
That's why all my friends and family told to come and say goodbye. I think I was 25 and I was still playing footy. So a lot of people have said, oh, that's so tragic, having a stroke at 25 and that's terrible and blah, blah. But I think the only thing that saved me was the fact that I was 25. I was still young and fit. And so when my body was in the balance and should he live, should he die, because I was fit, my body said, oh, no, I will let him live. And then also that being 25, the youth helped me drive. It helped give me a bit of purpose and drive through my rehab that I saw in my rehab hospital. People who've had kids and bought houses and seen kids get married. You could almost see in their eyes they just didn't really care to work hard in rehab because they're like, well, what's the point? I've done everything.
Yeah, right.
But I hadn't been married. I hadn't had a house. I hadn't had kids. So I had a lot of stuff I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which sort of helps you with the desire in rehab.
Yeah. And I imagine, like you said, a lot of those people have lived a lot of their life. It still comes back to that same thing. And it's like, it's a reason why, right? You had a really powerful reason why. I'm drawn to think about my mother-in-law when she got cancer, she's like, oh no, I'm going to be there to walk to be at my grandchildren's weddings. I'm not done. Like, she had big reasons. But that would be rare, I imagine, for most older people. But the fact that you had such a strong desire and motivation, that really carried you through. Were there days where that was a struggle?
Not really. I feel really lucky that my family and friends didn't let me get down in the dumps too much. So there was always someone in my hospital, always someone talking. So there was never a time where I had an hour and a half to look in front of the mirror and ask why me.
Yeah, right.
Also, one thing I always had in the back of my mind was a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep.
He was a prisoner of war. He was in a concentration camp in the war, and he developed a form of psychotherapy called logotherapy, where he said any man who has a why to live for can deal with almost any how. Yeah. And I was a bit like that. I had all these whys to live for. I wanted to play footy again, wanted to get married, wanted to buy a house. So with all those things, I just thought, well, going from the depths of depression back to normal and then excelling was difficult. But just staying there and not dropping off the face of the earth, it wasn't that big a stretch to go that little bit further.
So from the moment you woke up and you were joking about, well, not joking, you were being quite serious about whether you'd won or not, did you manage to keep yourself up, like, pretty much without having any of those real dark moments? That's amazing.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't have any dark moments, and
Was that Go on.
Sorry.
Keep going.
No, I was just going to say it wasn't through any strategies or philosophies or affirmations. It was just I knew that if you go too far down, getting back up is really difficult. So I thought, well, I don't even want to contemplate the negatives of it. I actually had policemen coming to my hospital room after the stroke and said, look, we've got some really grainy CCTV footage of the fight. We could pursue people, but the best doctor in the world couldn't say that that was the punch or that was the kick that caused your stroke. So chances of finding someone are unlikely.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know what? I couldn't stand up without falling over. So I had a lot of stuff I had to deal with.
Yeah.
I thought chasing someone for not a certain outcome wouldn't be all that beneficial to me. Even if every person in that group of 20 blokes gave me $10,000 each, that wouldn't have made my life a lot better. Would have made me, I would have bought a cool jet ski and a boat, but wouldn't have made me happy. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to surround myself with the good things, with the things that mean something. My family, my friends. I used to, when I got back to walking, I used to walk to the shops to buy a thing of milk, and I was spitting how amazing that was. I used to just have this huge appreciation for the little things in life.
Yeah.
And all those little petty complaints that I used to have, getting stuck at a red light when you're running late, being late for a party, your friend saying something nasty. I lost all of that care factor. Like the insignificant things in life just didn't mean a thing anymore. It was all about just adding value to my world.
Amazing. Is that one of those things you look back at being part of that Swans culture that you think that positive outlook? Because to me, I'm listening to this going, you must have done something before that accident to have such a positive outlook like that. You must have already done some work on yourself.
I think, yeah, look, I no is the answer. I haven't done anything specifically to avoid getting down in the dumps. I think I was just really fortunate that I was surrounded by some incredible people. But I've thought about this a lot, so I don't think you can just surround yourself with good people. So kick the bad people out of your life out and just get good people in. I think the only thing you can do is find the goodness in the people around you. I know some real toolboxes who have done wrong by other people and are kind of nasty people, but they've never done anything wrong by me. So I just give them the opportunities and have conversations, and until they do anything bad by me, we can be mates. So I think my recovery was just a lot of that, just a lot of good people in my life. And if people were peanuts to other people, I wouldn't hold that against. I wouldn't hold a grudge against them. If they were kind to me, then I'd be kind to them.
I got goosebumps all through that, mate. I just think that is such a great way to live, because it's true, right? There's always goodness within people. There's always some part of them that is worthwhile, and I imagine if you've seen the world through that lens, you also know that there's a reason why people are the way they are. It's not necessarily from their own creation; it's from their own experiences. That the worse that they are, it's usually a reflection of the horrible stuff they've had to deal with too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's no mystical answer. There's no superpower. There's no magic bullet. Just I think we're all a product of our environment and the people around us. But how we get treated by those people is based on how we treat them. If we treat them like rubbish and wipe our feet on them and try and steal money off them and do wrong by them, then they'll do wrong by us. If we're kind to them and generous and look after them, they'll do the same to us.
Yeah, it's that quote, people will forget what you said and forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. I think that's that's such a powerful way to live, what you're describing there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how important community was, your close friends and family, and I imagine the footy club as a whole as well. Have you chatted to them about the experience? Because I imagine it might have been a little bit disconcerting that you were so okay, because people have expectations about how things were, but also at the same time they must have been more, by the sound of it, far more worried about you than you were about you.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, there was some awkward conversations. So I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 14, and a lot of people didn't know anything about diabetes, so were really reluctant to come and talk. It's the same with the stroke. Like people just didn't know if I was, like we were talking about before, if I was deeply discarded and emotional and not doing too well. So they were a bit reluctant to come and chat. But again, it's how you're treated by other people. The conversations you have with other people will be based on the conversations you start with them. So if you're shy and not wanting to talk about things, they'll be shy and not want to talk about it. But if you just chat and you're open and honest and vulnerable, then they'll do the same to you. One of the most powerful things that happened to me early on, which I actually didn't even know at the time, but when I came to in the hospital, the guy who started the fight, he was pretty mentally scarred because he'd almost killed a bloke. He came into the hospital room.
Yeah.
And the word had got around of what had happened, and this guy started the fight, and everyone sort of saw him as the devil because he almost killed me. But when I came to, he came into the hospital room, which was full of my family and friends, and apparently he got death stares and really nasty side glances.
Wow.
He didn't say anything or do anything spectacular. He didn't leave a $100,000 present, but he turned up. Yeah. He walked in, he dealt with the grief and the death stares and all the anger, but he was there. And I find that for me was one of the most humbling things of my rehab, just the lengths people would go to. He knew he was going to get pretty dirty treatment, but he turned up because he and I were mates. We were mates before the fight, and I think the fight was stupid and he carried on like a dick, but he turned up and I take my hat off to him.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about in sport about courage, but that's courage that I reckon a lot of people wouldn't have.
Yeah, that to me that's real courage. Jumping off a cliff with a parachute is
stupid.
Is good on you, but this guy knew it was going to be mentally tough to do that.
Yeah.
But he turned up. He and I are best mates now. Like we still chat, but I'm not going to forget what had happened, but neither is he. But he made a stupid decision. I've got heaps of mates that make stupid decisions. Quite often it ends with, there's not enough paper in the printer, or you use a blue pen instead of a red pen, like stupid things. This guy made a really crappy decision that ended up with me almost getting killed. So look, it was stupid, but I can't hold it against him given the bravery and the courage he took to confront what he'd done.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as you said, like, everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure everyone can look back at their life and think of moments in time where they're like, well, that could have gone so much worse.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't hang people out to dry just because of those one moments.
Yeah.
There are always moments from our past that we could look at it and just have a completely different perspective, which is why when people do things that end up in maybe not such great situations, it's always that same way you looked at it before, is like approaching them with kindness and looking for the goodness, because no one's doing it intentionally. Like certain situation with some people I know at the moment who are going through exactly this sort of philosophical discussions amongst themselves and in the situation, and it's like at some point you've got to look at, that could have been any one of you at any different time, and how much longer are you going to make people pay for something that for a mistake that they made? Ultimately, the reality is we're humans. We're going to do things, and the only way we're going to get better at being community and getting along and making improvements is by finding ways to move past those things in a positive way, or we're just going to keep digging up old stuff, which is not helpful at all.
Yeah.
So if I just come back to that, what we're talking about there around the community and people being there for you, What was it like for your immediate family, your mum, your dad, your siblings? Like, have you talked to them about how tough it was for them in those moments, despite the fact that you were being really positive?
Yes, I most of the deep emotional feelings I get are based on how they felt,
Yeah,
because
right.
they were basically told, like, that's it, say goodbye to him, like there's no chance. Um, my mum, so I was taken to St Vincent, to the sanitarium hospital straight away.
Yeah.
My mum used to work there when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, and one of her old mates worked there, and her old mum told me that her old mate pulled her aside when I was in emergency and said to her, "Look, I just want to give you the heads up that you and Ross, your husband, will probably have to consider turning off life support." Which I was blissfully ignorant through the
Yeah.
whole drama of it. Like, I never knew I was potentially going to die. I was unconscious, so I had no idea. But that would be the most heart wrenching thing to sleep on that night.
Yeah. Wow.
So yes, I've had a lot of conversations with them, but again, that makes you more appreciative of the life you have today. Like this interview with an old mate from work, that you and I used to be good mates.
Yeah.
So this to me is more meaningful than it would have been before the stroke. So yes, it's been hard, and there's been some really disgustingly emotional conversations, but makes you more appreciative of the life you're living.
Absolutely. Well said, mate. Well said. Now, this this is a bit that I didn't know, and just reading your biography, and your first wife died of cancer, right? So
Yeah,
before we come
yeah.
to that moment, there's part of me that just thinks, how much can one person be dealt, right? Like, doesn't sound like you would have approached it that way at all because of what you've already describing. But when you hear that news, like, does that floor you?
Uh, if I think about it happening to someone else, yes.
Yeah,
But
right.
for me, I scientifically, I think I am actually at an advantage with my memory problems with the stroke. So when my first wife was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't think, oh shit, poor me, like this is horrible and what a bad hand. I I've developed a way of, well, I haven't developed. I've been forced to live a way of what they call mindfulness, where you just focus on what's in front of you right now, deal
Yep.
with that, fix it up, and move on to the next one. As my dad always used to say, finish one job before starting another.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so when my first wife was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't sort of think about why poor me and this sucks and I'm such a hard done by person. I just said, oh, that's a pretty shitty hand, but let's deal with it as best we can and make sure my wife's looked after and happy, and we'll move on to the next one.
And I guess, like, when you're thinking about it from someone else's perspective, yeah, you always look at it like that. So I'm listening to this,
Yeah,
just going, I just can't comprehend it being, um, like, being that easy as you describe it. But I guess in the moment, that moments like that force you to be present, don't they? They force you
correct.
to have to just deal with what this is the very next thing.
Yeah, and I just pull you up on something there. I quite often worry about this, that I'm making it sound like it was easy. It was
Yeah,
never easy.
yeah,
It was a really tough thing to go through, but it was the thing to go through. I wasn't dealing with my wife's cancer while also dealing with my stroke recovery and my diabetes. It was just cancer. That's what I was dealing with. So it
yeah.
wasn't easy, but it was the only thing on my mind.
When I say easy, not probably the word should have been simple. Simple from a process of, like, you just stuck to the process, but yes, never easy. Good
Yeah.
pickup. So what was the learning of going through that? Or maybe even better, what did you, from what you'd had to go through yourself, what did you learn that you were able to take forward in supporting your wife at the time?
That just reinforced something I thought about after the stroke. I always thought I was a reasonable person. Like, I'd done good things and tried to help my family and community around me, and I got dealt these really crappy hands.
Yeah.
So while I was trying to determine whether I deserved it and whether it was a fatalistic thing, I just shrugged my shoulders and said, you know what? Rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. But there comes a time when you just have to get over it and go and play in the puddles. And that was how I dealt with my wife's illness. She was a great human being as well, and really magnetically happy person. So it wasn't, her cancer wasn't a payback for anything she'd done. It just, some people get cancer, some people don't. And unfortunately, she got it. And we dealt with it incredibly, I'm trying to find the word, it wasn't happily. We dealt with it incredibly well. There were some things that her and I both needed more of in our lives, and we helped each other find those things. And I'll never forget the day she passed away. She was lying on a hospital bed in palliative care, and the bed was surrounded by her friends and family, all smiling, all laughing. And my mum came over and whispered in my ear, I think she's gone, Barnes. And sure enough, that was it. She'd passed away, but she passed away surrounded by people that were just happy.
Yeah.
And I think there was so many struggles in my late wife's life that was a really symbolically beautiful way for her to go out.
Yeah, wow. To me, like, listening to this and listening to just that one comment from your mum and what you said, the lessons from your dad, regardless of how you view how things happen, like, everything that your parents have instilled in you has helped you through all of this, and in a lot of ways prepared you for all of this as well.
Yeah. I think it's that stuff that people often talk about, the small stuff people do every day as if it's not enough, as if it's not making a difference in the world. But it's the accumulation of all of that small stuff that gave me the mechanisms I needed to deal with diabetes, my stroke, losing my first wife, and just getting through. So I haven't had one amazingly earth-shattering, inspiring conversation with one person that gave me a piece of advice that I've lived by. It's the accumulation of all the stuff, the man searching meaning, the guy that started the fight just being there in hospital, the swans with the Bloods culture. It's the accumulation of all of those things that helped give me where I needed to get through my stuff. And now I feel like I've been doing keynote speaking for over a decade. I work at the ABC. I host an interview show. And I feel like I'm giving people things they need to get through their challenges. So, yeah, I think if people are sitting back waiting for a magic bullet or a mystical X factor or the courage to go into an enchanted forest and slay a fire-breathing dragon, that's not how life rolls. You just appreciate the stuff around you right now, be good to people around you right now, and things tend to work out.
Love it. And I love how you talked about there that you're now making a difference in other people's lives. Because to me, the big challenges we go through, they're the greatest opportunities to be able to pass that knowledge on, and we learn what we need to learn. Sometimes we learn things that we didn't even know we needed to learn. And I don't know about you, but when I see people in circumstances I've been in, I'm like, I don't want them to ever have to go through what I went through. And if they do have to go through it, I don't want them to have to go through it alone without the tools that I've learned along the way.
That's exactly the thing. Helping a person not go through something alone is more important than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
So as a keynote speaker, I struggle with the promotion, the marketing. I don't like pumping my own tires. So I keep getting told I should get video testimonials and have people saying spectacular things. But I had one kid come up to me after a year 12 school conference in Adelaide. And he was all excited. He goes, "Oh, Barnaby, thank you so much. Thank you so much." I was like, "Yeah, no worries, mate. Just calm down." He said, No, I saw you speak when I was in year 9. I've done everything you've said. And here I am as a year 12 prefect.
No way.
I thought, that is the stuff I hope I'm achieving. So I told a few people that story. They said, "Oh, you should go to a video testimonial." I said, "No, that just takes away from the meaning of it." Like, I have hopefully changed this kid's life and given him a confidence he didn't know he had. And I don't want to water that down and make a spectacular video for myself.
Two things that makes me think of. I don't know if you listened to the great Les Brown at all, but he talked about sitting there. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale was doing a speech at his school, and he said, "And if one person in this crowd takes what I've said and does something with it, then I've made the difference." And he sat in that room going, "Oh, I'm that one person." And he goes, I'm going to show him, and one day I'm going to tell him. And he said, so he went on this whole journey through life, and he became a motivational speaker, much like yourself. And then he runs into him, and he goes, "I was the one." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "What? I sat in that room and you said that." He said, "I was the one." And then he tells this whole story around other moments where, it showed this leader the impact that he'd had just by impacting that one person. So I reckon what would be even cooler would be to hear from that young man a few years down the track, when he's taken that journey out of school into life and doing whatever it is that he wants to do, and really seeing that impact. The second thing my thoughts is this is how I look at testimonials. You've got a desire to help people. The more people know about the impact that you're having, the more people you can get in front of, the more lives you can touch. So don't look at the testimonials. I'm giving you some coaching now. You don't look at the testimonials for you, but it's like what they are is a tool for you to help even more people. And I think anyone who's been in that sort of space, there's a certain level of uncomfortable sharing, people saying really nice things about you. But I keep bringing it back to that. I need to share this so more people can see, and more people can then make a choice, whether it's to get help from me or someone else, but it inspires them to get help. And I don't know if that helps you or hinders you, but I just love that, looking at that testimonial piece from a different perspective.
Yeah. Just send us the invoice for that session.
I will, mate. Very good. I'm sure you'll send one back for appearance fee.
Having a chat with an old mate you can't charge money for this sort of stuff, mate.
No, and that's why I love about it. And that's like the platform. And even before we jumped on, people are getting a bit of an insight and behind the scenes. Sometimes with podcasts, people want to know what they're going to be asked and prepare and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, no, mate, I just want it to be as natural a chat as possible about the things we've done. Because this is my second podcast, and I learned heaps from the first one. And so this time I'm like, okay, well, I need to ask more of my people what they want, and what they want. Yeah, it's nice to see the big name guests, but what they love is just from everyday people who've been through experiences and how they got through it. And so that's what, to me, what I'm trying to create here, exactly what we're doing. Just raw and casual and everyday people like you and me.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, from that journey so far, what is a lesson that you could pass on to the listeners and the viewers that, because you've been sharing heaps of them, but is there, I know you said there's not one thing, but is there one that comes to mind now about how you can help people who do want to make more of a difference, who do want to help more people? What's something that they can take with them themselves to maybe be a bit more kinder to themselves, like you are able to do, and really pursue that with some confidence? Yeah.
So I'd say two things. First one is what we spoke about earlier. Find the goodness in the people around you. Don't sit back and wait for people to magically change into great human beings. Most human beings are good people. If they don't show it outwardly, there's goodness inside them. So go and find it. Go and ask them questions. Go and talk about their family. If that doesn't work, go and talk about motor cars. If that doesn't work, go and talk about international travel. You'll find something. Keep asking questions. You'll flick a switch somewhere. So that's one thing, be good to the people around you, and that goodness will come back to you, and your life will just start going that way. The second thing is to be grateful for the life you're living. So I think a lot of us get so inward looking. Oh, this job's not paying me enough money, and I'm being worked too hard, and my kids are being unfairly treated at sport. Stop being so insular. Stop being so focused on what's happening in your life. Look around you. Look at when you go to sport. If you think your kid's being ripped off, go to sport. Watch the families all hanging out and chatting, and the dads taking care of their kids, and the mums helping out, with the orange peels, and just look around you. There's so much beautiful stuff happening in this world. Be grateful for it, and just stop, look at it, soak it in, and then go off to a quiet spot, breathe in for a second, and go, my life's actually pretty bloody good. Yeah. And if you're, wherever you're watching this podcast from, if you have access to internet access on a computer, relatively, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
So whatever gripes you're facing, whatever's not going too well, just fine. Like, everyone goes through struggles, but just take it with a grain of salt and look at your life as a whole, as a totality, and just realise that you're doing pretty bloody well.
Well said, mate. And I'm glad you brought up that whole environment, looking around, you describing the footy club, right? Because I wanted to ask you about your comeback to football, right? So I saw your video just the other week. It's part of why it reminded me I needed to reach out to you. You went from basically losing function of your whole left side to then a recovery from major head injury, a stroke. When did you decide, or had you always decided you were going to go back and play footy? And tell us a little bit about that journey and how you actually got yourself back to be able to play again.
Right. Well, this is the beautiful part about having good people around you. So yes, I said, when I was in rehab, my therapist used to say, what do you want to achieve when you get out of here? And I said, I want to play footy again. So they were running backwards, dropping sandbags at my feet, and I was doing little hardball gets to practice, to go back to playing footy. Yeah. So physically I was doing okay. I was back to walking. I was running. But then I'd made it known around the club that I wanted to come back. I was on 96 games when I had my stroke. Yeah. So I needed to play 4 more games to reach my 100th. Yeah. So I made it known to the club that that's what I was keen to do, having no idea if I'd actually ever do it or if I'd be allowed to do it. Yeah. But after one game, I went down as a spectator and just watched the game, went back to the presentations afterwards, and the club's vice president, who hadn't told me at this stage, just got up in front of everybody and said, I've got a message for you, Barnaby. I've spoken to our 4th grade coach. He said you can have 4 games in 4th grade to reach your 100th.
How good.
So I was so stoked, and I'd never forget the conversation on the way home. My mother was saying, you should get medically checked out before you just say yes, you're going to play footy again. You might not get clearance. But I went to my rehab, my neuro specialist, who said I was at no greater risk than Harry Sacker-Rolls of having another stroke. So she said your coordination won't be great and you'll have struggles, but you're not at any risk of any further injury. So played my 97th, 98th. Played my 99th game. It was the wettest weekend in Sydney statistically, it was like 40-year drenching. Yeah. There were 5 games of sport that weekend. There was the Sydney Swans, New South Wales Waratahs. I think there was a soccer game, and there was an international visiting rugby union game, and Pennant Hills versus the UTS Bats at Cherrybrook Oval. I rang the club's president. I said, look, mate, my sister had booked a ticket to fly out from London for my 100th. Yeah. So if the 99th got cancelled, she'd be flying out for my 99th game. And I said, I can't make her do that. He said, don't worry, mate, we've kept the ground open. You've got it.
Oh, mate, you're powerful.
Powerful, stupid, whatever you want to say. So then came the day of the 100th, and it was just that support from the communities around you blew me away. I woke up in the morning, got the Sydney Morning Herald. There was an article in they used to be a thing called the Fitz Files.
Yeah.
Fitzsimons used to write little, interesting stories. A guy from the club had got in touch with Fitzy, and there was a story in there about my 100th game comeback. I got a phone call from, I can't remember who it was, but it was the captain of the GWS Giants, who rang to say, I heard you playing your 100th. Good luck. I hope it's awesome. Got down to the ground. ABC News had sent a news crew. Sydney AFL had put a news crew down there as well. Gary Jack, the ex-Kangaroos fullback, his son Kieran played at Pennant Hills. Yeah. So Gary turned up, gave me some advice. He said, I'll give you the advice my dad used to tell me, run hard, don't get hit. Sounds easy. Yeah. So then when the team went into the change rooms to get ready to get the rev-up speech before the game, when we came back out, every single person at the game, fans, family, officials, all had these T-shirts on that said Fat 44. My nickname was Fat. My number was 44. So
how good.
We all given one of those, went and warmed up in our Fat 44 shirts. It was awesome. Best day of my life. Kicked 2 goals as well.
Oh, no, mate. I saw the video. And mate, that was some good footy. You said the first couple of games you were struggling.
Good footy.
Well, considering your obvious limitations in that situation, like, you got to take the win, mate.
Oh, look, I'd take the win any day of the week. It was funny. So the game, we'd been going about 20 minutes and neither team kicked a goal.
Yeah.
So I just got to be greedy and thought, I'm just going to go and float in our forward line for a while and see what happens. So I went down there, took a mark. I think it was about 80 metres out. Driving rain, wind, went back, kicked the goal. I used to be a left footer, but I've got a cerebral tremor in my left hand after I had this finger amputated. So I can't drop the ball on my left foot anymore. So I had to kick it on my right foot. Went straight, but apparently it landed that far short of the goal line.
Yeah.
There was a mate of mine from the footy club who was goal umpiring. He said, you know what? I'm giving it a goal.
So good. So good. And all on video, all the ABC, was it ABC, the news crew that were there?
Yeah, so ABC did a story on it, but one of the blokes, a guy called Trent Rodden, who was a good friend of mine from the footy club, he was in charge of the media and the promo at the club.
Yeah.
So he gave all the water runners GoPro cameras. So this dude, when I took the mark, this dude ran out from the sideline, stood right behind me with this GoPro. It was awesome.
How good. The lengths you have to go to get personal care like that. Why was it the best day of your life?
Because that was the physical representation of all of that, like we were talking about before, the accumulation of small stuff in my life. So all these people I just had good friendships with my entire life from when I was playing junior footy. My old under-18s coach flew up from Victoria, a bloke that I played footy with who hadn't been back to Penno for 15 years. He turned up with his family. When I ran off the ground after the game, first person I heard from yelled out, Barnaby. I turned around and it was a girl I went to school with, mother. I wasn't best mates with the girl from school. We were just sort of good, solid friends. She was living in America, working for a department over there. And because she couldn't come to the game, she wanted her mother to go to represent her.
How good.
So the mother of this girl I knew from school was there and we said g'day, and it was really, that to me was just a real highlight of how important the small relationships and the small goodness you have in life can be. So that's why it was the best day of my life. Well, sorry, second best day. I've remarried. So obviously that wedding day was better than the time.
At the time.
At the time, yes. There you go.
Good save. To me, it also just it's a representation of just how important our footy club or our sports club or whatever community group you're part of is in our life, and how it can create magic moments. Like that's the power of sport, right? I remember the week after my dad passed and playing, and the usual captain couldn't, like, he wasn't playing, he might have been suspended or something, and he handed me the captain's armband. And it was just one of those real emotional moments. And I remember doing a speech, and we went out there and played the best performance we'd played all year. And it was like, like only in those environments can you get people together that can create an atmosphere that's life changing, right?
Bloody oath. And and you don't create those relationships and friendships because something bad might happen. You just do it because it's quite cool. It feels good.
Yeah.
And then if your world falls apart down the track, they'll be there to support you, so you won't feel like your world's falling apart.
And you certainly won't feel like you're doing it alone.
Correct. Exactly right.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. So tell me, you said your mum asked you about, like, you better get checked out. Were there people in your world who were telling you maybe you shouldn't, or they knew there was no way they were going to stop you playing?
Oh, there was no, I'm pretty stubbornly independent, so I think most people know that whatever they say isn't really going to get taken on board. So my mother was the main one because she's got this medical background, so she understood the risks and the damage. But because of her, I went and got checked out. Yep. But the doctor signed the letter and said you got clearance to play. So I didn't really care what anyone else said. I was going to do it anyway. So they didn't, because they're not stupid. But I wouldn't have taken anything they said into account anyway.
Yeah, but you had the signed off for your mum's benefit, so she could rest assured. So you did the 4 games. You got to 100. No desire to continue playing?
I actually did play again after that. So the club had an old boys game at halftime of the first grade game. I think it was a couple of years later. No, not years later, like the next year. So we had a bunch of old boys all get together and played a pretty serious game at halftime. But it was a 20-minute game. It was not hugely physically exerting. It took me 2 months to get over it. So I was 29 when I played that game, and 30 when I played the old boys game. So look, even if I hadn't had a stroke, I was getting a bit too old to play footy anyway. And with sport, if you don't use it, you lose it really quickly. Yep. So I played my 100th and put a pin in it and said, no, that's it, I'm done. And then came back a year later for only 20 minutes. But I was stiff as a board, so there was no way in hell I was coming back.
Yeah. Good way to finish, though.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you remember back to your childhood? Did you have a sporting dream? Like, was there some aspirational goal that you'd set for yourself?
I had 2 sporting dreams. One was to play AFL for the Sydney Swans, and then playing for another team didn't come into the equation, just the Sydney Swans. My second goal was, if that didn't work, I'd play basketball for Australia. But I played the highest basketball team I got to was the Hills Hornets under 14 Bs. So I don't think that dream had a lot of gas in it. No. But then when I got diabetes, I didn't know if I could keep aiming for either of those dreams. I just didn't know what diabetes meant for my life. And my biggest fear was that I was going to have to be wrapped in cotton wool and stop playing at the level I'd been playing at. So, but because I had no idea, I thought, well, I'll just get in there and give it a crack. So I went back to footy after diabetes, got through it okay, had a few little hiccups, but nothing life-threatening. So when the Swans rang, they actually asked me to come to pre-season training at the end of 97, start of 98. And I did the pre-season and was doing really well. I was really fit, and I think I got the highest beat test score. And Paul Kelly was there, Stuart Maxfield, some real athletes. Yeah. So if confidence was, if that's medium, I was off the charts. I was just so happy with where I was and where I was going. And Felt like it was all my dreams coming to reality. So yeah, it felt really good. The season, when you're on the supplementary list, you've got to do something pretty spectacular to be promoted.
Yep.
And I was okay. I was solid, but I didn't shoot the lights out. So at the end of the year, our coach Rodney Eade called me in, said, "Sorry, mate, we don't need you next year."
Yeah, right.
It was 1 year, one and done, but awesome.
Did that hurt hearing that?
Not really. I was disappointed because I wanted to be a Swan, but I wasn't that surprised.
Yep.
So I actually, over the next couple of months, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just hadn't tried hard enough. I think I was a bit starstruck, walking to training and seeing Paul Kelly and Plugger Lockett, Mark Bays, Andrew Dunkley. I don't think I just tried hard enough. So I went down to Victoria and did a pre-season with the Melbourne Demons under Neil Danaher. Worked my bum off, didn't drink too much, ate right, did all the extra training, didn't get signed by Melbourne, played 2 years with their sister club Sandringham in the VFL, which is the next step under the AFL, where if you're doing something spectacular, you'll get picked up. But again, I was okay, but not shooting the lights out. So didn't get picked up there. But I actually came back after those 2 years of giving everything I had to give and doing all the extra stuff. Came back to Sydney prouder of trying and failing at Sandringham than I had been of seemingly making it at the Swans, but not trying hard enough. So, I wasn't disappointed. I was really proud of what I'd done, even though I'd failed.
Yeah, because that time you knew you'd given it everything.
Correct.
So you could walk away knowing, satisfied that, okay, well, I gave it everything.
I just wasn't a good enough footballer.
Yeah. Which is the reality of a high percentage of gifted footballers, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's part of the message. I don't know what it's like at whether you've got involvement in any of your local clubs, but it's at the football club and in a lot of different areas. It's like the reality is that your number one goal is to make sure they come back. It's not about your visions of them playing for their country or for Barcelona or something like that. It's like you want to make sure they come back because there's too many situations where young people are getting chewed up and spat out by the system and given up when we both know the community sport just holds so much power if you stay with it into those adult years and the power of community, that like the camaraderie, it's huge. Yeah,
I think the biggest benefit of community sport, or sport in general, but especially community sport, is that small intangible stuff, the stuff that can't be measured. But elite sports is all about measuring and defining who's the best and who's got the talent and who's the fastest and can jump the highest. That's the stuff that doesn't really matter at the end of the days. I spoke to Ben Matthews from the Swans, who's an assistant coach at the Swans now. Played in the 2005 Premiership team. And we're talking about the Bloods culture. I interviewed him on a podcast. And he said the aim at the Sydney Swans is to try and make everybody there good people. If they win games of footy, that's just a bonus.
How good. Love that.
They've lost 2 games this year. They're dominating. So join the dots.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense, right? Happy people, good people tend to perform better.
Correct.
Yeah. Do you have before that diabetes diagnosis, do you have a really happy childhood sporting memory?
Yes. So I was a huge Sydney Kings fan when I was younger, the basketball team.
Yeah.
My favourite player was Dwayne McLean, who wore number 44. And my dad was the president at Pennant Hills when I played my 200th game of juniors. So he came over to me and he said to me, you get a commemorative jersey for your 44th game. What number do you want? I just looked at him like confused. I was like, 44? What else? That's a dumb question.
So good. I had the great Bob Turner on earlier in the series.
Yeah.
So I'll have to make sure I send that through to you. And if for the listeners and viewers, if you haven't checked that episode out, check it out, particularly if you're a basketball fan or you remember those halcyon days of the Sydney Kings. One of the things that Bob talked about was the importance of bringing community in, even at that level, and how they got, I don't know if you remember, but you could go there after the game and actually meet the players, and you can chat with Wayne McLean.
Yeah, I remember having a chat to CJ Bruton.
Yeah, so good. So good. The fast forwarding forward to this part of your life, and you've talked about a whole lot of different life lessons you've had, but specifically from sport, what's something that sport has taught you that you now are able to then transfer to other areas of your life?
So the biggest thing I've got from sport, which sometimes sounds a bit too simple, but the biggest lesson I've learned, don't be a dickhead. People talk all the time about these measurable statistics and be vulnerable and be authentic and be this, be that. Just don't be a dickhead, and things tend to be all right.
Yep.
If you go into any conversation, don't be antagonistic. Ask them about them. Find out about what makes them happy. And the way you treat those people will come back to you. So if you're trying not to be a dickhead to other people, people will generally try not to be a dickhead to you, and things tend to work out all right.
Yeah, and if you are, there's nothing like a group of teammates to pull you back down to earth if you are right. Yeah,
right.
So good. We've talked a heap about the positive impact of sport and family, community. What about well, I guess first question is, what do you still have an involvement in a sporting sense?
Not officially. I ran the water for Pennant Hills for a couple of years. Sorry, not the water, the messages. I was the message runner in the fluoros. And one year, I think I realised my message running days were over. I wasn't that fast. And with the memory, my short-term memory, the coaches, they go and tell Jono that he's now going from centre back to the forward pocket. I'd run halfway out and go, holy shit, who am I meant to be speaking to here? So anyway, I got a few garbled messages, but I got the sympathy, let it go. But then one day I was sitting on the bench, and the coach was going ballistic. Someone had done something stupid. He's going off his nuts, going ballistic. And I was sitting behind a couple of players, so he couldn't see me. And he goes, "Where's Fat? Oh, bloody hell, he's gone again." So I was like, "No, I'm over here, cuz." He's like, "Oh, sorry, mate." I think that was the writing on the wall.
It's time to go.
I lost that job pretty promptly after that.
Yeah.
I ran water. I was demoted and ran water for a while, but I haven't done anything official. I just finished recording my video podcast with the Sydney Swans at their headquarters that they co-hosted. So it's not an official annual role, but it was just that generosity and camaraderie and looking after each other. So I pinch hit every now and then, but no, nothing official.
Yeah, you have kids?
I've got a almost 17-year-old daughter who's turned into a massive Swans fan, which is awesome.
Awesome. Tell us about a great sporting memory with her.
Oh, that's easy. So she plays netball and played for the Asquith Magpies, which she played with. She's now at Hornsby, but she played for Asquith and has done since she was a kid, a really small kid. And one year they were struggling for coaches. So my wife and I put our hands up. But we know as much about netball as that plant behind you there. We're not great netball tacticians.
Yeah.
But we got up at the first training session and said, look, we don't know anything about netball, but I reckon you guys will make the grand final. And a few of them laughed and sniggered at the back and saying, we've never even played in the finals. But we just got into work as a team and respect each other and trust each other, and they ended up making the grand final. They got flogged in the grand final, but they made it.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, yeah, that was the look in their eyes, that look of belief and pride and confidence on grand final day really made my adulthood. that was really spectacular.
Yeah, and what really struck me there is you talk about what you focused on, and if you're a coach yourself or you're someone that's looking after young people, how often do you just focus on those things that Barnaby's just mentioned then? Because they're the things that make the real difference. Yes, there's skill elements, and yes, you need to talk about basics and foundations, but it's those parts of it, the camaraderie, the connection, the self-belief, all of those things, they're huge, right?
Yeah. Again, I think they're the biggest things in sport, which is tough because as a coach and an administrator, you're judged by your bottom line figures, like your win-loss record, the number of kids that make rep squads, all that sort of measurable data. But I think to get the most impact from that measurable stuff, you start with the small stuff, and the rest of it just takes care of itself. So Penn Hills Footy Club is known as the nursery of the AFL in Sydney because they've had so many AFL listed players, Lenny Hayes, Mark and Jared McVeigh, had a stack of AFL players come through it, but they don't promote it as a nursery of AFL. They don't have elite talent, people come in and give hardcore boot camp sort of strategies. They just keep being a community of non-dickheads. And the byproduct of that is that there are a lot of AFL players coming through. So it's, I know it's tempting to go with the measurable stuff and focus on that. But in this day and age, I think there's so many ruthless people out there just trying to make those measurable statistics fit whatever the hell they're doing.
Yep.
That don't start from the start and make happy people. If you make the happy people, the measurable stuff takes care of itself. And then those happy people go on to give back to your community group later as well.
So true.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep. And that's true for sport. It's true for a corporate environment, a business environment, a family environment.
Mm-hmm.
If you focus on those places first, then it just flows through, right? People who are happy and enjoying it and are in a good environment are far more likely to be doing what is for the greater good.
Exactly right. You make it selfish and about you, and I hate to be political, but you end up like the US election at the moment. Just two peanuts battling against each other.
Yep. And without having given it much attention myself, it's like, what's the difference? Like people arguing about, these different sides, and it's like, anyway, let's not go there.
That's a different podcast.
Exactly. One that I don't want to go anywhere near. Barnaby, I've really enjoyed reconnecting, having a good chat with a good mate and hearing all about your story. Mate, you're doing some amazing things.
Thank you,
I know you do some work in the community now. You're also a keynote speaker. Where can people find out more about you and what you do? And if they're looking for someone inspiring to come and speak at their club or their business or school or whatever it is, where can they find you?
Thanks, mate. Through my website, probably the best place, barnabyhowarth.com.au, or on social media, send me a direct message. If you get in touch with Ian, get my phone number, and let's have a chat in person. Let's go and get a coffee or something.
Sounds good, mate. And we should absolutely do that as well. We'll make sure we get your links in the show notes so people can find you as well. And like Barnaby said, if worst cases, you reach out to me and we hook you up. Mate, that was awesome.
Thank you, mate. Very good fun.
Yeah, always good to learn more things from people who have walked a journey and learned a heap along the way. So thank you so much, mate. I appreciate you.
No worries. Thank you, mate. Been a pleasure.
Cheers. How good was that? Can you believe how positive Barnaby has been, despite the fact that he's been through some of the most challenging experiences that life can throw at you? And he was able to stay positive because of two main things. My two takeaways from today's chat. That was when he was going through that initial recovery from the stroke, he had such powerful reasons why he wanted to survive and he wanted to make the most of his life, why he knew he was going to get better, because he had so much more he wanted to do in his life. Definitely something you can apply to your own life no matter where you're up to. And the other one was the importance of having the positive community, family, friends, and the footy club that kept him positive, kept him upbeat, and provided him with so many different opportunities to get more from his life and know that at every moment he was supported. Definitely some things here from this chat that you can take away and apply to your life. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.